Once upon a time there was a pond of glimmering tales, secrets and myths to be unfolded by a determined fisherman. Some say that this fisherman knows deep in his heart that the mysterious tales are true and the riches and wealth are there yet to be discovered by others. Hello everyone, and welcome to the showcase of my fishing quest. This quest has been made using the BetonQuest plugin. BetonQuest is an excellent scripting plugin that allows quests to be very variable and only limited to the creativity of the mind. Today I will walk you through this quest and show the adventure that the player will unfold. To start the quest, the player needs to be at least level 25 in the fishing skill. If the player tries to start the quest without this requirement, the fisherman thinks that they are not yet a worthy fisherman like himself, and that they have to come back later when their mastery has improved. After a little training in the fishing skill, the player comes back to the fisherman. This time, the player managed to get the required skill level, and the fisherman will start talking about the myth of the hidden treasure chest. He thinks that the myth could be real, and if it's real, that he could become a very rich man. He promises the player that he will share the many, many riches if the myth is real. However, before we dive into the myth, the fisherman once again wants the player to show their talents by fishing one of each fish. The player accepts the quest and starts fishing. After a while, the player has caught every type of fish and returns to the fisherman. The fisherman compliments the player about being a good fisherman and starts telling about the myth. He once read this myth in a book, but the book has unfortunately gone missing. He thinks that he lost the book on the flying ship nearby his fishing hut. The player is then asked if he can search for the book, because without the book, all hope to uncover the myth is lost. The player accepts the wish of the fisherman and begins to make his way towards the flying ship. After a little search on the decks, the player finds the book in the captain's chamber and starts making his way back to the fisherman to tell the good news. And so the player starts to believe a little more that this tale about riches and wealth could be true. Once the player tells to the fisherman that the book has been found, the fisherman responds in an exciting manner and immediately starts to read out the book for possible clues on this myth. Apparently, the map has been torn to pieces by an unknown force and is shattered in and around a little town. One piece has been spotted in a library. Another piece seems to be hidden near a merchant, and the last piece seems to be hidden near a mine shaft in a little mountain. Once the pieces have all been found, then they need to be fused together to bring the map back in its former glory. The player is then told to find the scattered pieces of the map. If the player forgets the hints for the locations of the map pieces, then they can come back to talk to the fisherman. The player has found a map piece near the merchants. It was hidden inside a cart, which is usually used for transporting goods such as hay bales and pottery. Someone might wonder if anyone ever looks in the bottom of the cart. The player seems to have found another piece of the map inside the castle of the town in a library. How wonderful! And finally, the player has found the last map piece near a small mineshaft. And with that, the player can return to the fishermen who tell the good news. As soon as the player is done telling the good news to the fisherman comes up with a plan to renovate the map pieces together to its former glory. The player requires to gather a list of items to create some good quality glue, as well as some other materials for some good quality map renovation. The player can always talk to the fisherman again to get a reminder of what the list of items are. The fisherman also explains to the player that the glue has to be put on a certain temperature and quality while preparing the glue. To get it to the right temperature, the player requires to use coal on the furnace. To get the quality right of the glue, the player can use a stick on the furnace to stir the mix to the right quality. Heating and stirring too much, however, isn't good for the glue either, and the player will have to start over the process if the mix didn't fit in the right window of temperature and quality. Here's an example when the player fails to create the glue. The player is notified that the process failed and what caused it to fail. Then the player has to gather the ingredients again and come back to try again. With all said and done, the player attempts to create the glue. The player can start the process by hitting the furnace. Once the coal has been added to the furnace, the process will begin. Whenever the player makes a step in the process, the quality of the mix goes down by a little. This is to simulate the realism of creating a mix so that the player requires to stir the mixture right away when a new ingredient is added to it. When the player has finished creating the glue, they get some experience in their alchemy skill and heads on to renovate the map. The player makes his way outside towards the cartography table and starts fixing the map. First, the player glues the map pieces together. Then they knit and weave some pieces of string and paper in the map pieces. Lastly, the player renovates the ink of the map with some dye of their own. Once done, the player picks up the map and talks to the fisherman to present him the greatly improved treasure map. There is now only one thing left to do. It's now time for the player to find the hidden treasure. The fisherman can't give the player a copy of the treasure map, but thinks that the player is believing so much in the myth that they can find the treasure without ever looking once on the map. The player now also has been promised that he can keep all of the treasure if they find it. The player starts to search for treasure. The place where the player can find the treasure is randomized between a certain amount of spots. What once was a spot for this player isn't necessarily the same spot for another. Therefore, finding the hidden treasure is deemed to be a serious challenge. The treasure should be located around the town and the shopping district. Let's see if the player can find it. After searching far and wide, the player finds the spot and starts digging for treasure right away. A little bit of digging later, the quest has been completed and the myth has been unravelled. The player has found some coins, a nautilus shell, and 3 mysterious fishing shards inside the treasure. The player can return to the fisherman to let him examine the shards. The shards seem quite valuable. The fisherman has examined the shards with some help from the book. It seems that from now on, the player has a small chance to find these shards when fishing. The fisherman also has activated a magic crystal on his platform to crack open the shards for some extra rewards. This concludes the myth and story of the determined fisherman. Where many fables remain to be fables, this myth has been unfolded and risen from the ashes to make dreams come true. If you want to stay tuned for more in-depth Minecraft quests, then you should subscribe to my YouTube channel. I hope you all enjoyed this story, and I will see you in the next video.